Barack Obama like you have never heard from him before. A video has been uncovered from a campaign event in 2007 of then-candidate Obama speaking before an audience of African-American ministers, including the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. This is further proof that the mainstream media has been in the pocket of Barack Obama since the day that he arrived on the national stage. Now, let's take a look at what the left-wing press has been hiding since 2007. Now, we begin with a clip of Senator Obama repeatedly praising the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, who again was in the crowd at Hampton University.
And then I've got to give a special shout out to my pastor, the guy who puts up with me, counsels me, listens to my wife complain about me. He's a friend and a great leader, not just in Chicago, but all across the country. So please, everybody, give an extraordinary welcome to my pastor, Dr. Jeremiah Wright, Jr., friend of the United Church of Christ. Where's he at? There he is. That's him. That's him right there. You're wearing a suit today, right?
Now it gets even worse as candidate Obama then injects a heavy dose of racially charged rhetoric into his remarks, speaking about Hurricane Katrina. He goes off script and he claims that the victims of that storm were ignored by the government. On the other hand, 9/11 survivors and those impacted by Hurricane Andrew, they received endless government assistance. Watch this.
I just want to give you one example because this really steams me up. This isn't in the prepared remarks. Down in New Orleans, where they still have not rebuilt 20 months later, there's a law, federal law, when you get reconstruction money from the federal government called the Stafford Act. And basically it says when you get federal money, you've got to give a 10% match. The local government's got to come up with 10%. Every $10 federal government comes up with, local government's got to give $1. Now, here's the thing. When 9/11 happened in New York City, they waived the Stafford Act, said this is too serious a problem. We can't expect New York City to rebuild on its own. Forget that dollar you got to put in. Well, here's $10. And that was the right thing to do. When Hurricane Andrew struck in Florida, people said, look at this devastation. We don't expect you to come up with your own money. Here's the money to rebuild. We're not going to wait for you to scratch it together because you're part of the American family. What's happening down in New Orleans? Where's your dollar? Where's your Stafford Act money? Makes no sense. Tells me the bullet hasn't been taken out. Tells me that somehow the people down in New Orleans, they don't care about as much.
Now, this notion that the government is turning its back on African-American communities while doing all it can for predominantly white areas is repeated throughout the speech. Look at this.
And that's why we need additional federal public transportation dollars flowing to the highest need communities. We don't need to build more highways out in the suburbs if we have people in the cities right now who want to work but have no way to get into those jobs. We've got to help connect them to the jobs that exist. We should be investing in minority-owned businesses in our neighborhoods so people don't have to travel for miles away.
Now, this is what so-called unbiased journalists have been trying to hide for years. It is a glimpse into the mind of the real Barack Obama, and it's one that all Americans need to pay close attention to. As you watch the speech, one thing just stands out at you. And this is a common phenomenon. Al Gore, Republicans have the wrong agenda for African Americans. They don't even want to count you in the census. He said before a predominantly African American audience. Right. Hillary Clinton did the same thing. Do you notice a change in the way he delivers the speech before a predominantly African American audience?
Well, the accent, let me just be totally clear, and anyone who just watched it and who's seen Obama speak in public over the last 10 years will note this accent is absurd. This is not the way Obama talks. At least it's not the way he's talked in the dozens, the scores of speeches I've watched him give or public appearances I've seen him make. This is a put-on. This is phony. That's the issue one.
Having been born and raised down in Georgia, I'm very surprised at the incredible Southern accent that the president, who was born in Hawaii and grew up in Chicago, was able to command. That's very interesting to me. But I do think that there is a tinge of racially motivated comments that he's making there. When you start to compare, New Orleans to September the 11th in New York, and then also the Hurricane Andrew, I mean, you're trying to play on people's worst fears and emotions.
Second issue is he is telling a predominantly black audience something very clear. The federal government doesn't like you because you are black. That's a demagogic thing to say. That's a divisive thing. That's what he's saying. They don't like you because they are black. That is the theme of the speech from front to back, from beginning to end. They don't like you because of your skin color. And that is a shockingly that's a nasty thing to say. It's a divisive thing to say. It's a demagogic thing to say. And in the case of Katrina, it's an untrue thing to say. At the moment he uttered those words, you're getting shortchanged in Katrina reconstruction funds. The administration, the government had pledged $110 billion to the Gulf. 2 weeks before this speech, the Bush administration gave the Gulf, the Katrina-affected areas, $7 billion with no strings attached. He was a sitting senator. He knew that, and he said this anyway to that audience.
Senator Obama delivered those racially charged accusations on June 5th, 2007. What he failed to tell us is the Stafford Act was waived for New Orleans 10 days prior to that speech. And here's the worst part. That senator, Senator Obama, was one of only 14 senators who voted against waiving the act and delivering the funds to New Orleans.
This was a candidate who on the one hand said he wanted to bring us together and then gave speeches like this that are clearly divisive. I mean, there's no way you can listen to the speech and not hear it as a deliberately divisive speech that pits Americans against each other and does so largely with racial innuendos.
So is he using the word suburbs to suggest white communities?
Okay, this is not a dog whistle. This is a dog siren. These are appeals to racial solidarity. And a few minutes before that, he said, our people, our young people, should have gotten the construction jobs to rebuild after Katrina, but instead they went to Halliburton, right? So look, he's making a very clear case, again, on the basis of his racial solidarity with this audience, that they are getting shafted by a racist federal government.
Show them side by side.
I've got to give a special shout out to my pastor, the guy who puts up with me, counsels me, listens to my wife complain about me. He's a friend and a great leader. Everybody give an extraordinary welcome to my pastor, Dr. Jeremiah Wright, Jr.
I have already condemned in unequivocal terms the statements of Reverend Wright that have caused such controversy and in some cases pain. For some, nagging questions remain. Did I know him to be an occasionally fierce critic of American domestic and foreign policy? Of course.
When Hurricane Andrew struck in Florida, people said, look at this devastation. We don't expect you to come up with your own money here. What's happening down in New Orleans? Where's your dollar? Where's your Stafford Act money? Makes no sense. Tells me the bullet hasn't been taken out. Tells me that somehow the people down in New Orleans, they don't care about as much.
Reverend Wright's comments were not only wrong, but divisive. Divisive at a time when we need unity. Racially charged at a time when we need to come together to solve a set of monumental problems. Problems that are neither black or white or Latino or Asian, but rather problems that confront us all.
Who's the real Barack Obama, Tucker?
They're speaking different language, different cadences, different accents, different gestures. I mean, the falseness here is overwhelming. And I would say that whether he was putting on a Southern accent or an Asian accent, it doesn't matter. He is playing a role in one of these cases. It's not clear which one. It seems to me this is a case of extreme pandering. He is talking to an audience in a way he thinks resonates with them, but he's also using fear to motivate them. Again, the core of this speech, a very simple message. The federal government doesn't like you because you're black. Imagine telling people that. Imagine trying to make them more fearful, more paranoid, more hurt. That's a truly divisive and sick thing to do, and it's on display in this video. This is not one right-winger's opinion.
How would you classify the comments? Racial? Is that best way? Is it?
Of course I would. Of course I absolutely would. If a white politician got up in front of a white audience and said, here's what you should know about black people, they don't like you. They're in charge, and they're shafting you, and they're profiting from your suffering. What would you say that is? That is racial rhetoric designed to make people fearful.
This is deadly earnest, man. This is deadly earnest. How they can justify raising taxes in the middle class that's been buried the last 4 years. How in Lord's name can they justify raising their taxes?
And when it comes to faith, we've been told that all that matters is what divides us. Evangelicals, don't be talking to mainland Protestants. Black church, that's different from the white church. Had stories about Trinity United Church of Christ because we talked about black people in church. Oh, that might be a separatist church. Catholics can't be getting together with Protestants or Muslims or Jews.
Here was my exchange with Reverend Wright. This is on the website today. Well, let me just inform our audience, and I want you to respond if you can. It says commitment to God. By the way, I'm with you, and I hope you'll pray for me, Reverend. Commitment to the black community. Commitment to the black family. Adherence to the black work ethic. Now, Reverend, if every time we said black, if it was a church, and those words were white, wouldn't we call that church racist?
No, we would call it Christianity. We've been saying that since there was a white Christianity. We've been saying that ever since white Christians took part in the slave trade. We've been saying that ever since they had churches in slave castles. We don't have to say the word white. We just have to live in white America, United States of white America.
I think as a Christian, you should not separate by race in this day and age. And that's why a lot of people are going to look at that and say, we're all supposed to be united under Christ, aren't we? Obama talking about his meeting with Reverend Wright. Notice the different speaking style.
And that's where I met Reverend Wright and started going to Trinity United Church of Christ. And he helped me on another journey and introduced me to someone named Jesus Christ. And I learned that my sins could be redeemed. I learned that those things that I was too weak to accomplish myself, maybe he could accomplish them for me if I placed my trust in him. And I learned that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things.
Reminds me of Al Gore when he went into preacher mode and said, Republicans, they don't even want to count you in the census if you're black.
To say something like that before this audience is, again, to reinforce the point that the rest of the world doesn't like you because of your skin color. This makes people more fearful, more afraid, more paranoid, and by the way, more cut off from the rest of America. This is the opposite of what a uniter does. This is what a demagogue does, and it's wrong.
So what do you make of the changing cadence?
Well, we've seen that game play before. Hillary Clinton, Al Gore, Joe Biden, and whatever. That's political pandering. This isn't pandering, though, Sean. This is Obama being who he is. He didn't evolve from the Frank Marshall Davis, Derek Bell teachings. He didn't evolve from his involvement with Bill Ayers and the others and Jeremiah Wright. Let's call it what it is. It's time we realize that he doesn't pander. While he uses whatever he needs to at the moment to say anything to an audience, this is his true self. Look at his record. Look at his 1998 remarks at Loyola, redistribution. Look at his remarks on the Warren courts not going far enough. He believes this stuff. He didn't evolve. He has not grown into the governance of this country. He is who he is. This is the Obama that says, I'm going to not only prey on individual groups and use you as I need you, but I'm also going to use the black community. And this is usury. You're using the black community. They're still in the same horrible positions in many cases. And what have they gotten from him? Nothing.
This is from 2002. We've called President Obama a class warrior, warfare warrior. Take a listen from 2002.
I don't know if you know